So recently, Enlisted has given us a lot of new planes that we have, of which these planes are actually really good. And these new planes are so good that I have decided to revise my top 5 best planes, and today we're going to be covering top 5 best planes that you should grind right now in Enlisted. That said, without further ado, this video has been made possible for friends at Discord, meaning if you haven't liked, subscribe, or joined Discord, highly suggest that you do. With that said, let's get started. Starting up, we have the I-185. This is one of the latest Soviet planes that Enlisted has given us. As a matter of fact, it has come to us via the last Enlisted update. This plane is actually really good. The two 250 kilogram bombs is really good, and the three 20mm Shavak cannons can absolutely destroy every plane in a few bursts. The only issue is that the climb rate and the best turn speed isn't the best. As a matter of fact, I would say it's a little bit below average. The actual hard part is dropping the bombs. For you see, the cockpit is actually lower than that of most planes, with the big issue being that the sights you have to aim with, which you do have on this plane, are harder to use. As a matter of fact, I think you have to aim lower, or should I say higher, than you actually do on other planes. But once you can master that, the I-185 is actually a joy to fly. The heavy cannons, and of course the two 250 kilogram bombs are really good. That said, let's move on to the next plane, and that is the Focke-Wulf 190 V12. This is German plane. It has been in game for a long time. It has one 250 kilogram bomb, one 30mm cannon, two 20mm cannons, and of course four 50 kilogram bombs, of which this is a heavy loadout. Needless to say, with all this loadout, the speed is actually also going to be very high at 745. With the speed very high and the loadout being so heavy, the question remains, what is the caveat? And the caveat is the best turn time. You see, the best turn time is 19, which is actually worse than the I-185 at 18. This plane is going to be really hard to turn in combat, but once you get something on their tail, it is really hard to shake this thing off. And what makes this worse is that the 30mm cannons and the 20 mils can absolutely shred anything that you can hit. And boy, do you trust me when I say shred, because this thing can just shred planes within seconds. That said, let's move on to the next plane. In the third spot, we have the LA-7. This LA-7 at first glance isn't that special, especially with the armament. Two 100 kilogram bombs and two 20mm Shavak cannons. Like the I-185, it's really good. But unlike the I-5, it's really a joy to fly. For one, the best turn time is 16, much lower than the Focke-Wulf and the I-183. And what's better is the fact that the two 100 kilogram bombs can destroy any single tank if, and of course if, you know where to bomb and how to bomb, because a direct hit can send any tank up in flames. The two 20mm cannons, if you know what you're doing, can shred any single plane, and you can outturn every single plane, not to mention that the whole structure of the LA-7 is actually stronger than you think, so that's a buff. Of course, let's move on to the second spot, which is the P-47. This has been one of the oldest planes in the game, and for good reasons, and it has been on the top 5 list, almost every top 5 best planes list, for a very good reason, and that is the armament. One 500-pound bomb, 8 12.7 Browning machine guns, and 10 HFAR missiles. The only better thing that you can have is the flight dynamics, which is actually on par with some of the planes on this video, meaning that this plane is really good at fighting planes. And of course, you can just do a 180 and bomb every single thing over and over again. I sometimes feel I have some rockets that I have in a single run, meaning I can actually do 2 runs instead of 1 run, which is very cool. And of course, this plane is extremely deadly. Matter of fact, this is really good for taking out every single thing. So that's very good. Before we move on to this first spot, let's talk about some honorable mentions, and these are going to be quite interesting. For one, we have one of the oldest planes in the game, that being the P-37. This has been really good, but for some reason, unless it has decided to debuff this, meaning that of course its original turn rate was really good, now its turn rate is average, which makes this thing not the best at all. The BF-109 has been one of the best planes ever since, but it is not great. It's a really good plane, it's just not great. Well, not great enough to be on this list, but in terms of everything, the BF-109 is actually pretty good. And of course, we have one of the later planes in the game that has been added, and that is the AP-4C. For those who don't know, this is essentially the American Corsair with 8 rockets and 4 20mm cannons. The issue why this was not on here was because it had to take off from a carrier in the Pacific maps, so that's going to be a really big pain because, well, you have to build up to altitude and then you can start fighting planes, of which the next plane on this list does not have that problem. And of course, in the first spot, we have the Ki-84. Unlike the Corsair that I just talked about, this Ki-84 is a fighter, and it does not have to take off from an aircraft carrier in the Pacific. The other benefit about this fighter is the fact that it turns like a dime. For one, this is a zero. Well, an improved version of a zero. It has a turn rate of 15, which is one of the lowest on this entire list, and unlike the Zero, it is actually really fast at 711 kilometers per hour. The armament is also very terrifying at 2 250 kilogram bombs, 2 20mm cannons, and 2 12.7 machine guns, all of which are very devastating. Of course, it doesn't have any 30 mils like on the Focke-Wulf, but this thing is really good. Any plane that you fight against, you just have to turn away from, and literally that's all you need to do to win. This thing is really good. It can outturn everything. It can actually run circles around the P-47 to tell you how good this thing is, and it can outturn the P-47 almost every time of the day. The only issue is that you have to be careful because this can be shot down by every single plane, whether it's in any tier, because this plane has no armor. Unlike other planes, once you get hit, you're pretty much going to go down, so that's going to be a downside. That said, this is a very good plane if you know what you're doing, which you should, because this is a really player-friendly plane. You can cut down any single plane on this list, because let's just say this is extremely easy to fly, and all you have to do really is to turn away from every single plane that you face. And that's it. Literally, that's it. So that's it for this video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the Discord, and I'll see you in the next one.